what you're most excited to hear about.
Well, tons. I can tell you that today, all day, the conversations that we're going to be having, whether it is with top global majors, NVIDIA, OpenAI, Google DeepMind, or the top investors you see on this stage who have been thinking about how investing in the AI era is going to change. I think these are conversations that are going to be very, very defining, and the world will be a different place in the next few years, and it's very important that we bring these perspectives out and we have these conversations. So that's what we're excited about. I think we are waiting for Aakrit, but we can begin if he's going to take a bit longer.
We are waiting for Aakrit, but we've also got NDTV Profit's executive editor and head of markets, and Neeraj Shah, who's joining us in just a minute. That's his chair right there. And I'm very excited about this because you're probably going to be talking about ideas that are yet to come to the primary markets and eventually to the secondary markets. So Neeraj and Shweta, over to you.
I think given the excitement about the space, we could have done this standing also.
Right, exactly. All right, so investing in the era of AI. That is the theme of today's panel and discussion. And we have a star cast, literally, the who's who in the investing world with us here to talk about what they're thinking, how have trends changed, and what can we expect going further. Great to have with us, of course, Manav Garg of Together Fund, Ashutosh Sharma of Prosus. We've got Vikram Vaidyanathan from Z47, Harshjit Sethi, who famously led the Sarvam investment early on, and of course, Neeraj from NDTV Profit to support me in moderating this session. Let me start by talking about one other company that has been making waves right now, and Manav Garg is best suited to talk about that, Emergent. Mukund Jha and team. For those who have not been following what's going on, this is a vibe coding company coming out of India that in just 8 months has touched an ARR, an annual recurring revenue of $100 million. So for those who were saying, you know what, there is no AI in India, here's Emergent telling you all about it. So Manav, tell us a little more about what vibe coding is all about for the uninitiated. Why is Emergent success important? And how this is going to be an inflection point for India and AI?
All right. So first of all, I am feeling really, thank you very much, Shweta, for having me here. I am feeling so proud that we have one company which is out there. It is not only the fastest growing company in India, it is the fastest growing company globally. If you compare in consumer AI, there are about 8 companies which have touched $100 million in about 8 to 12 months. Emergent is the 9th company which has crossed $100 million in 8 months. So it has...
I'm gonna make sure the audience has got this right. The fastest growing AI company in the world is an Indian AI company, is what Manav tells us. The kind of growth that we've seen is unparalleled, only the 9th company, correct? Now that's
right.
Huge. And this is all a change in the last few months, correct?
Yes, so the product was launched on May 27th, and they touched $100 million on 16th. I was in flight from Boston to Delhi, and that's when they touched $100 million in ARR. So in under 8 months. So
tell us a little more about why vibe coding is so exciting as a trend and why Emergent is setting a new trend, so to say.
So if you look at, we invested in Mukund and Madhav Jha, they're 2 twin brothers, in September 24. At that time, they said they're going to focus on automating the entire software development lifecycle so that software development can become far more efficient. As they started building the product, testing, and as 3 months into the building the product, they realized actually they have found something which is really, really like gold. Because now what software can enable is, it can enable a non-technical user, people like you, me, and many people in the audience, who can now enable them to build anything that is in their mind. So the first unlock came through laptop. The second unlock came when you can build your app on mobile now. So for example, if you're a bakery owner in Philippines, you go online, you can build your storefront in a couple of $100s. You are a farmer in agriculture in India, you want to understand the crop movement, you want to understand the crop life cycle, you go there, you can build an app in few thousand rupees. And we have people from Mexico who are running clothing manufacturing companies, running the entire software, entire company on this vibe coding platforms. So what it has done is, it has brought the cost of software development by 100 times below. So somewhere who spent $100,000 probably have to spend, $1,000 now.
All right, so the cost of software development coming down dramatically, and vibe coding is making it absolutely easy for anyone in this room to be coding tomorrow without knowing those coding skills. And that's the kind of breakthrough innovation that we're seeing in the world of AI. Ashutosh Sharma, as the head of investments and M&A at Prosus, which is a large venture capital firm globally, you clearly back platforms across emerging markets at scale. What are some of the trends that you're picking up, especially in India, and what do you think will be some of the adoption models? We've just seen India finally arriving when it comes to foundation models with Sarvam. We're seeing a fantastic success story with vibe coding and Emergent. But what are some of the other themes that are emerging?
Thank you, Shweta. I think vibe coding is definitely emerging, and therefore we also backed Emergent. But much later than Manav, sadly.
Right.
But on a serious note, look, whatever picture I paint for you today will be absolutely obsolete tomorrow. That's how fast this space is changing. And it's not because of AI, it's not because of anything new. It's millions of years of evolution. We as humans are wired to use our resources carefully. I mean, this is a nicer way to say that we are wired to be lazy. So anything that makes us more productive, nobody needs to teach that to us. And AI at the core is that. It makes us much more productive, all of us. We can code better, we can make videos better, we can make speech better, and so on and so forth. So while today we see a lot of action at the foundation layer, who the winner there is, it's not decided, but there's a lot of action. Similarly, in coding, there's a lot of action because people who were making AI software were developers, and of course, who best to create this for but for themselves. We see a lot of action on vertical apps, legal, accounting, finance, so on and so forth. But to everyone who's listening to this, to all the budding entrepreneurs, this is what's happening today. But I promise, and you probably know all of this already, that every sector, every space, every niche, every nook, every cranny is going to change completely. And so you need to figure out which change, which action you want to drive and start building.
That's an interesting. Okay, is my mic on?
Neeraj, yes.
I don't know. Everybody can hear me? Yes, you can now. Okay, great. I'd like to come to you, Harshjit, and try and understand whether you believe that for a largely service and people-led tech sector of India for the last 2 decades, can AI be disruptive in that it could lead to job losses? Or will we have world-beating companies which can do a mix of both, which is scale and scale with taking people along with them?
I think this is a little bit of the crossroads India is at this point. The technology is real and the technology is going to be disruptive, whether we like it or not. And there's this term that lots of people have been talking about, the Jevons paradox, which is to say that if the cost of something drops dramatically, then actually we just create more things to fill up the void, right? And so we should assume that services is going to change. A lot of automation is going to be possible. But the reality is that India has all this data of doing this for so many years, and data is a very fundamental moat in being able to build strong automation, right? So if you're able to leverage this and we adopt technology quick enough, I think we certainly can be, have an even larger services sector going forward.
Okay. Do you second that, part one? And part two, while we are getting, let's say, the fastest growing AI company in the world in India, the opportunity size, a lot of people lament, is much larger outside. So for people who are parking money into AI-led businesses, does India give a really good bang for the buck, or is the opportunity still outside? Or larger opportunity still outside?
So if I zoom out, I look at this overall India AI opportunity in 2 parts. The first is what you said second, which is, I do think there is a lot of power in this DPI to the power of AI, where this digital public infrastructure, the magic in it is that it is linked to every Indian, and therefore it is sort of prescient that it was made for agentic.
But that's non-profit, right?
Sorry?
But that's non-profit. That's non-profit person.
No, let me complete my thought.
Sorry.
My thought was that when you look at sort of agents layered on top of DPI, that democratizes financial services even more. So imagine an agent that negotiates on someone's behalf to get the right loan at the right price. It democratizes healthcare, where you get a digital doctor. It democratizes education in a way where education that's offered only in the cities is offered to every Indian, and so on. So I think the opportunity on this DPI to power AI is massive. The friction point today is the cost. The cost of inferencing is too high for it to be available at population scale. In order to, so it needs like that catalyst geo moment. So if you bring it down to a cost, that happened with mobile, then real magic starts to happen. So that's the India opportunity. We have a bunch of companies like NESA, Ulka, which are going down that path. The second opportunity, like you said, is global. The immediate opportunity is AI services, which is you essentially help the world how to build AI at production scale. But I think the real opportunity is AI product companies, or I just call them AI companies because they're product, services, everything together. And there it is owning outcomes and not owning like a tool that does the work, but actually does the work and completes the work. And you're starting to see some of those outcomes happen across already in our portfolio, but those are sort of 95% accuracy or automation outcomes. But you're starting to see that you can get to this 99%, 99.9% owning the outcome. Then you get into labor replacement, higher productivity that drives revenue, and so on. Then that market really expands.
Yeah, Ashutosh, you have a point. Yeah.
I just wanted to add something to that. Look, I think if you, there's two lenses to take. If you take the GDP lens, of course our GDP is lower than US and China. And so the opportunity is smaller, right? But if you take the product market fit lens, I think AI's product market fit is best suited for India. AI is made for India. If someone looks into our Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, somewhere there must be a prophecy about AI. Why is that? Because we are an extremely, extremely complex country. We are very diverse, 22 languages, I know 30 languages, there are probably 100,000 dialects and so on and so forth. We come from various different demographic backgrounds, right from kind of a government school going kid to the best school in Mumbai, in South Mumbai, South Delhi, and so on and so forth. The only leveler will be technology. And the only leveler will be technology that can be custom to me, my learning needs, my health needs. There is no way we can build enough hospitals, enough schools, train enough teachers, train enough doctors. The only leveler will be that. And therefore, I think AI is the tool to lift India to get to the Viksit Bharat dream that we...
Ashutosh, let me challenge that. I think Vikram and Manav also want to come in and hold your thoughts because we'd love to hear this and this is getting interesting. But Ashutosh, if I were to challenge that, see, on one hand, you're saying AI will democratize, right? And that's hugely powerful because countries like India probably need that leveler for technology to be a leveler. And also, at the same time, we are seeing that the pace at which this technology is accelerating. I mean, look at it. All of us who probably follow it day in, day out, if we probably don't read overnight, by next morning, we're probably already laggards, right? So how will the world adapt in a time when we're already seeing a two-speed economy of sorts, right? You have power users, those who are adapting to AI quickly, and then there are laggards who simply are not being able to cope up. But on the other hand, there is the power of what you're saying, which is democratization. So how do you think these two twin trends will play out?
I think that's true with every technology. I mean, remember, I was not even born then, but when the cars were launched, right, they were power users of car, but there was probably 95% of the people said horse is fine. My life goes on with the horse, right? But over time, I think people do realize, and now today, cars are democratized. Everyone from Modi ji to my father uses a car.
Right. I think Vikram wanted to make something. Yeah.
I was going to pick up on the same thought, and this is almost as fundamental as fire, right? So, but you can, and then you start discovering tons of uses. You use it to cook, but you also use it to make steel. So, I think we are at that cusp of really discovering what that technology is. And I think for India, like Ashutosh said, I think it is sort of tailor-made for India, but also the stack is tailor-made for agentic. There is no other tech stack in the world like DPI where it links the data of every Indian, every user, like it does in India, and every Indian has access to it. So it was sort of like, I can have my own personalized agent for a bank. I can have my own personalized agent for healthcare. I can have my own personalized agent for education. And I don't think that access has ever happened to more than the top 100 million people.
Yeah, I think
just wanna
Harsh and Manav both
jump
want to
in on
come
this.
quickly.
Shall I have a slightly different point of view than yours on this? I think there's a lot of progress on AI and everything on the frontier is changing rapidly and there's lots of research. But if you just think about what AI has made possible today, there's a lot of just using the models as they stand today. If you assume
Right.
those are the best we have for the next few months, even just the capability that all of us can access through that is enormous, right? So right now, I think yes, we can all think about being on the bleeding edge and wanting to sort of keep pushing the frontier models forward. But if we just take what we have today and make sure that is democratized and those sort of permeate all aspects of our life, there's a lot of value to be created, and that's sort of where India can really shine.
Great. So even with what we have right now, it's enough
It's
to
great.
keep us
We don't
going.
necessarily have to be on the cutting edge.
Manav, yeah.
I think to me the fundamental question is a bit different. I think we all will adopt AI. I think if you look at it for OpenAI, Anthropic, and for Emergent, India is the second largest market, by the way. 13% of the user of Emergent or users and revenue is from India. I think the larger question is, what is the market share this time an Indian company can take? I think in the past waves as well, whether it's internet or car waves also, it's always the MNCs who have come into India and actually taken most of the revenue away. I think the larger question is, I think it's at a country geopolitics war level. If we don't have indigenous companies who are actually becoming global in this wave, I think we'll have a challenge.
All right, when you have a Neeraj, go ahead. You had a question. Yeah.
No, just a follow-up to that, Shweta. So Manav, to you then, is there a possibility that in the next 5 years, we do that? Because as of now, the global, the MNC companies are the ones which are building the tools on which maybe service companies might do that. Infosys doing that, tie up with Anthropic yesterday, for example, right? So will India carve out niches, or could we have global scale companies which have a moat, a true moat in AI?
Yeah, so that is what actually the Emergent model is showcasing. The Emergent is showcasing. So what is that model? India has an opportunity on top of the frontier models, right, which is application layer. So what Emergent is an application on top of Anthropic and OpenAI and many other frontier models. So I think that is where the fundamental innovation has to happen. So what is the innovation that Emergent has done? They went after production-ready applications, which a frontier model cannot do today. So once you find innovation in a horizontal, that is one way to build a company. Now the question comes, in addition to a fundamental insight, what else do you need? So what has gone right for Emergent? If I can say, okay, Emergent is a model which we can replicate many more companies, is that, first of all, a deeply technical team which can solve a very, very deep technical problem, which is competing at a world scale, the valley scale. Number two, culture of working almost 16 to 18 hours a day continuously. It's like I sit with them, 2 to 3 days a week. They work 16 to 18 hours non-stop, shipped daily, and their intensity is same as what OpenAI and Anthropic would be. And number three, capital availability, right? So what we have done when we invested in Emergent, we wrote a 5.5 million seed check in September 24. That time, most of the funds were not writing very large seed checks. And subsequently, of course, they have raised capital, they raised $100 million. And if you look at OpenAI and Anthropic today are also raising, $40 billion, $100 billion capital perhaps over a period of time. I think these things have to come together. And that is where government support is also going to be very, very important to get there. I think without that, I think we'll end up becoming all beholden to foreign companies. I'm sorry to say that, but that's where we are going.
Yeah, and I want to take forward that theme before I also come to the risks, which is the role of government, right? We have been in active conversations at the Startup Policy Forum with policymakers, with the Ind.AI mission, with METI, talking about the important role governments will play. And there are twin sides to that. Number one is pure infrastructure, the compute, right? And is the government empowering innovators enough with that infrastructure? And the second, of course, is the other side on regulation. How much to regulate this technology that clearly nobody is keeping pace with, and how do you do that? It's a hard job for a regulator. It's tough to be a regulator in today's times. So first, any of you would like to talk about the infrastructure and government as an enabler. How important is that role? And are we being able to do enough, or is it still that India is playing catch up?
So I think in addition to the points that you made, Shweta, on compute and research, which India is obviously behind, I think one thing we forget that capital is also an advantage in this case, because all these things need massive amount of capital. If you look at what Trump did, he went to Saudi Arabia or to Middle East, got all the capital into the US. SoftBank is investing in the US. So I think we also need a capital of different scale.
And that brings me to the concentration risk, because if you're not pumping in the kind of capital, and the government's thinking is a little bit of a wait and watch, because just the sheer hundreds of billions of dollars that are going in, I mean, is that the route India should follow?
See, I don't think government alone can actually invest so much of capital. I think it's how do we market our country? How do I make believe that India can produce those global companies? I was speaking at Harvard before this. Their Chinese are saying we'll build companies which are global scale and we'll compete with the US. India is not saying that. So India will have to attract capital from outside.
Correct.
Enough capital is available. I don't think we can depend on government to give all the capital. All we want is India to be marketed, and founders have to come together and showcase that we can build the companies. It's a global race.
It's a global race. That's a big point, Vikram.
So, firstly, asking venture capitalists who think as a startup scale to talk about the macro is very dangerous, but I'll still venture an opinion. I think the cost of compute is fundamental to drive the pace of innovation for the country. And that's something that the government can play a big role. I think this time we could play our cards a little bit smarter, because as this technology is coming into the market, we are already the second largest market of scale for everyone. And therefore, we need to make sure that investments are made on the country's behalf by people who want to use this market. And I think that's how we can play our cards a little bit smarter, and therefore driving down the cost of compute, which I do think if you offer that cost of inferencing to founders in the market, they will create magic with it. The second part of it is the regulator. And I think, I work in fintech as well, which is where the RBI, I think, is a very progressive regulator. We, in fact, I did a workshop with the RBI fintech department head, and I think he was very curious about how AI can be used. And I think the first focus for them, obviously, is going to be how AI can be used in compliance, which can then regulate the AI that's used for business in some ways.
So,
right, yes.
well, Ashutosh, I'd like to bring in a distinction between how listed market investors think about what policy the government is doing versus what the private market investors might think. Now, for the listed market investors, maybe first part of the train is gone, but what the government is incrementally trying to do is pretty encouraging, which means the data center 22-year tax holiday. I mean, in some sense, it's not something that we've seen, right? Is that good enough? Or do you reckon something more can be done? Because there is a limit to how much the government can fund these causes. At some point of time, the government will derive policies in order to attract capital.
No, I think fair point. So look, I think in my mind, there is two very important things that are required. One, of course, is compute. I think we're all clear. The other one is a slightly softer aspect. There's probably 5,000 top researchers, AI researchers in the US. There is probably 3,000 in China. There's probably 250 in India. Right? So I don't know if you can build policy to bridge that gap, but that's a big gap.
But that's a long runway, right? What to do in the near term is the question.
I think, look, near term, these two are combined. The national security imperative on a sovereign model which runs on sovereign compute is I think, very, very important. Because once we have that, we can start building with Indian values and products which are kind of very, very nuanced from an India perspective. So I think that's important.
Sure.
So I think the big gap, everybody acknowledges, I agree with Ashu, that we don't have researchers. But I think key part is those researchers on their own are not creating companies. The founders who are creating companies. So Sam Altman is not a researcher. He went and hired researchers, right? So I think if Indian founders can hire in the US, there are about massive Indian diaspora researchers in MIT, Penn State, and so many other colleges. I think Indian founders raise capital and hire those researchers. The teams can be hybrid teams. I think it's the first way we can create the companies. Meanwhile, through government policy and initiatives, we are building our own research, infrastructure. This is going to be a 10-year gap. But nothing stops me for going and hiring people in the US, right? We can be Indian corporate company, hire researchers in the US. Some of them really feel for the country. They want to come back and be based here. Some of them want to be based in the US. That does not matter, right? As long as we're able to build IP in India and companies are solving problems from here, I think we can do that. That's the entry model to my mind.
You want to
All
bring in the
right,
risks
yeah.
now? Yeah.
I think we want to take forward this discussion around how do you balance the need for capital, and you all said that there's absolutely no way we can say no to foreign capital at this point, right? So if Google's coming and putting in $20 billion in Vizag, you know what? Of course, government of India would welcome that. On the other hand, there is this constant pressure on sovereign, 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 and it's coming from a very important need, as Pratyush just said in the opening session, that you know what, this is one technology where the need for safeguarding national interest, the need for having sovereign capabilities is higher than ever before. So if today you're a regulator and all of you are today, evaluating hundreds of companies, understanding the risks that come with investing in AI, but today imagine sitting in the shoes of a regulator and trying to grapple with this absolutely unprecedented scenario. On one hand, ensuring that there is no slowdown in innovation, but you know what? We cannot give up our sovereign interests. Any thoughts on how should a government balance that?
So I think if you look at a structural level, what belongs to India is the data of India, right? Our citizens' data. So I think first and foremost is we have to make sure that data is being used for India and remain in India.
So you think regulatory incentives and policy incentives to make sure that data usage is India first is something the government should press into action.
Yeah, that
and
is
I'm sure
immediate.
some of the global majors here in India right now would not be happy with that, right?
Correct. So that is point number one. That is immediate, which I think can be enabled through policy, and it's going to be difficult given geopolitics right now.
Correct.
I think number two is we have to compete on a business model within countries now, not just within the companies. So what is the business model? US business model is founders attract capital, they build technology and license to the world. What China did, government-sponsored companies, they did innovation and they did open source. That's how DeepSeek and all that are coming into play. So what is India's model? I think India's model is built on the raw talent India has. India has to get this talent capital, give them infrastructure, and say build for India, and give them enough IP protection around the world. And that's the way only we can come out in mid to long term.
Would you guys agree? Harsh?
I think, there's the framing of this that at least sort of we've learned from the West, which is that, it's just about capability. And so we just have to be cutting edge and that's the best. Actually, I don't think that's the best. I think if you sort of think about in the India context, I think it's about marrying capability with cost and context, right? If you think about sort of, regulated industries that have to use these models, they have to be sort of, it has to be at a price point that is sort of palatable for them to use it. It's about sort of, thinking a little bit about the context in which their users interact with their services, a little bit of what Sarvam is trying to do, right? It is marrying these three things that produce, quote unquote, the best solution. So just framing the problem as saying, on a certain benchmark, that can be arbitrary, deciding that, Indian models are not the best is perhaps not the right way to look at it, in my view. I think Indian models can actually be very competitive for Indian services.
Vikram?
I think this overall sovereign strategy is almost existential for the country. So I think it's very important for us to sort of figure it out right now. In terms of what this this AI trend line does, it just increases the surface area of attack for everything, right? From a cybersec perspective, think tons of agents running around in a bank, both your agents as well as the bank agents. That just creates an incredibly chaotic surface area. So I think one is investments on that surface area of attack are actually super important from a top-down perspective. The other is, I think if we just keep aping where the West potentially is driving use cases for AI, then we might fail, because the power of the tech is to potentially direct it in ways that the West might not, right? That's how we ended up with UPI, right? So you have to direct it in ways that actually drive use cases, whether it's health, whether it's education, in a way which helps us much more than the West is doing.
It's hard
Yes,
to,
Ashu,
sorry,
yeah.
I was just saying it's hard to opine on sort of what the government should do. But look, I think the national security point that Vikram made is very valid. So one lens is that to take. But the second one is, from a usage standpoint, this is such a unique space. There's a lot of capex that is required here in this case before the product becomes real. And therefore, to a certain extent, we will need a secure demand for a LLM, for a sovereign LLM player to deliver on that promise of LLM. And I think that secure demand is something that the government can really help with.
Shweta,
All right.
I'll get the audience to ask some questions as well. Since we have one more guest, I'm just
Yes.
getting up. Let's get the guest on
That'll
the
be
stage.
great.
Yeah?
Thank you, Neeraj. We've got Aakrit Vaish of Activate who's joined us as well. Neeraj is going to bring in audience questions for
Yes.
us. But this discussion, Aakrit, I want to bring you quickly up to speed. We've been having some fun talking about what's going on. And I think you've come in at a perfect time because the conversation is exactly around and as Ashu was just saying, very hard to be in the government's shoes right now because it's hard to decide what do you do. You know what? You need global capital, so bring in these global majors. You know what? The who's who of the global AI world is lining up in India right now. The Ind.AI Summit has been a show of strength for India. But at the same time, sovereignty is a question that keeps coming up. And how do you deal with this question of, are we doing enough to make sure India is moving on that path of sovereignty in AI? Aakrit Vaish, just to give the audience some context, is a seasoned founder and a prolific founder, is someone who has advised the Ind.AI mission as well in a brief stint with the government as an advisor, and is now doing something even more exciting. His new fund, Activate, is an AI-focused fund. So all that he's going to be doing over the next few years is look for AI companies and invest in them, and that's his only thesis. Is that correct, Aakrit? Are you bullish enough to say there are enough companies out there for you to back?
So many questions, but let's try to take the easy ones first. Are there enough companies to back? That's one hill I'm willing to die on, 100%. I just think you have to look hard enough to find them. Also, I think the entire reason for me to do this and the name of Activate comes from, we think the best AI companies in India are yet to be created. I think we have a few great examples in front of us, but the bulk of the AI activity is yet to happen. So that's why we called it Activate, that we want to activate these companies. I think I caught like the last few seconds on the should India have its LLM sovereign question. I think that, and what should the government do? I think we sometimes forget that globally, most of the sovereign AI that has been created, actually the government did not play a capital allocator role. In most other countries, the policymakers played a policy-making role and enabling and creating ways in which companies can navigate. But really, beyond a certain point, this capital has to come from venture or private capital or private equity, because that's ultimately what will lead to value creation of these companies. Ironic, we're sitting here at 11 o'clock because in an hour, Sarvam announces their sovereign LLM.
Absolutely, and Pratyush was here this morning. We had Shiv, in fact, do a fantastic session, Aakrit, where he did a lot of demos, his glasses. So it's actually a moment in time that we are seeing right now. It's almost goosebump moment, because you had Pratyush here opening the Ind.AI Summit of NDTV, doing that demo, going to Bharat Mandapam, and going to be launching. You're just coming right from there. We're all part of this moment and this conversation right now. But to me, what is most exciting is how quickly trends and sentiments change in this AI world. Just a few months ago, the pessimism, and Harsh, I want to bring you in. Not just the pessimism about AI in India, but the pessimism on Sarvam particularly, right? There were naysayers, there were critics, and today everyone's a champion. So I just want to understand that, is this not a bit disconcerting also, because I think no one can be doing crystal ball gazing anymore, and it's all about wait and watch.
I think what we have to understand is that there's two types of companies, right? There is all the application layer companies that build on top of these models, and then there are research companies, which is sort of, what Sarvam and OpenAI and others are. And research just fundamentally takes time. And so the patience that we as an ecosystem need to show companies that are actually trying to push the ball forward on research just needs to exist in the ecosystem. We just cannot expect fundamental innovation to happen overnight. These things take a lot of time, effort, capability. And I think that's sort of what Sarvam has demonstrated, that actually India has the talent. It may not have as many researchers as the US, or it may not have as much capital as the West, but actually we have some very smart people that understand India the best, and that they can actually build some pretty phenomenal things.
We're going to bring in audience questions, and Neeraj, those who are interested in asking can start raising your hands while I quickly do one quick round of questions. But Neeraj, it'll be great to have audience. One quick round to each one of you on the one big risk that you're seeing right now, or the risk that anything that's worrying you, giving you sleepless nights, or something that you see as a risk that we're not talking about enough. Very quick, and then we're going to go to audience. Manav,
I think the
starting.
biggest is the guardrails of safety. When my daughter or teenage son using ChatGPT or Anthropic Cloud, I think they are all not designed for safety to the extent we all need. We don't know what is inside the black box, even though we are focus on AI and we deal with these companies day in, day out. I think enough is not being done on safety because it's a race. And in a war, people don't care about safety first. They first care about winning, and then safety comes second. I think that is the biggest risk.
And a great point coming from an investor, so safety is a big point.
I think the biggest risk from an India perspective is, as an ecosystem, everyone in this room, we underestimate the size of the opportunity and not go all in. I think we are already behind the two major powers in the race, and now is the time to go all in.
Vikram.
I think for me, the risk is similar to what Ashu is saying. We don't recognize the size, and then therefore we don't recognize what kind of change is needed to actually really think AI native. Because right now, I think all ideas are a little bit incremental, saying this is how it works. How can we use AI to make it a little bit better, versus saying, hey, this technology fundamentally changes how an org should look, what roles should it be. You are seeing designers coding, coders shipping customer service requests automatically. I think everything changes fundamentally, and we're still thinking incrementally about the size of the opportunity.
Harsh, yeah.
I think for me, it's jobs. We're starting to talk about it, but we need a lot more new companies starting to absorb some of the changes that are going to happen with AI.
Akrit.
I think selfishly from an India AI perspective, the only thing that keeps me up at night is, does the third year IIT student at IIT Bombay, as he's thinking about or she's thinking about their career opportunities, they have two choices to make today. First is go down the Arvind Srinivas path, that look, the best research is going to happen in the West. I'm going to plan a way that I can get to the Bay Area and then build my career there. Or I want to build AI for India or AI from India. I think that this is a real fork in the road moment. And I think if the more of the former happens, then we'll be sitting here doing more conferences. But I think really the hope is that the next set of founders, the best quality founders, the best researchers at the IITs and India see that this is a market to build from. And that ties into what everybody was saying, that the size of opportunities needs to be made visible.
All right, I know we have to go to audience questions, but I have that one last question because I think we have to wrap up and we have the next session starting. Neeraj, quickly, one question from you, and then we're going to start wrapping.
Yeah, I'm not going to take the audience questions because that's Alex and Ayush's job, so AI is not taking their job away, nor am I maybe.
Right.
But just one question, because all of you are investors, right? I'd love to know. One thing is for the government to try and do capital raising, enabling provisions or regulations. But what about valuations? From where you guys have invested over last 12 months to the valuations at which opportunities would be available right now at the scale at which these companies can go globally. Any of you can come in on this. Yeah, sure, whatever. Please.
So I think the valuation, I'll just give you some data points. From PitchBook data, the size of exits have really gone up massively. So right now we're looking at 1%, top 1% is a 20 billion plus exit. We have so many companies touching 20 billion plus globally speaking. It used to be $5 billion or $1 billion 20 years back, $1 billion and $5 billion later on. So therefore, the entry level valuations have also gone up subsequently, right? So today it makes sense for me to write a $20 million seed check, a $100 million valuation, because I know if the team is really good and they solve a hard problem, it can be really, really large outcome.
Yeah, but
so
all right, I think, I'm so sorry, we're really out of time, so I'm going to have to end this discussion because we want to make sure we're running on time. But I think this has been a fantastic panel. Ayush and Alex are going to join me in here now to bring in the next panel. But I have one thing that I'm going to be very excited about is to bring back this panel when we have the $100 billion Indian AI company. And quick word on when that's coming. Anybody, any one person to end this panel on. How soon are we going to be back when we have the $100 billion India AI company to celebrate?
I think 3 years.
3 years.
I'm just going to go with faster than anyone thinks.
All right. Anyone else?
5. 5 years.
5 years. All right. So I think with that, we're going to wrap and we're going to have a very quick break before we move into the
Shweta,
next
you know what?
panel. Yes.
The AI gods have showered some love on us. We have some time to take a few audience questions. I see question marks
All
in
right.
the audience.
You're the
And
boss.
Alex and I need to burn some calories, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be on that side right here already. Just a minute. Hi.
Hi, thank you. It was a very insightful panel. This is an insightful discussion in India coming from Davos, a very different language, very different theme. But my question is for all of you, can emerging AI economies like India leverage lighter touch regulation to become deployment hubs, or will the lack of model level regulation eventually limit global trust and interoperability? Anyone for anyone.
Whoever, either of you can take.
I didn't understand the question actually.
Sorry, you want to repeat your question, ma'am, very quickly? 30 seconds?
Yes. Can emerging economies like India leverage lighter touch regulation on AI as Europe is doing model level AI, or should we as investors be skeptical about the regulation curbing the investment returns for us?
Yeah, so I think you're trying to understand what role a regulator can play. Like in Europe, you know, UK and Europe probably is heavy on regulation as against India, which is light touch. I think if you look at India has always been a market-driven economy. And regulator has done fundamental work on it. For example, if you take a biggest innovation on payments, which Vikram was talking about on UPI, where government created digital infrastructure and let the market decide who the winner is. And the foreign capital came in, and we have a very, very vibrant financial inclusion ecosystem now. I think similar for AI, I think the model for India would be a light touch regulation, and then market-driven forces where we attract capital, we use our talent, and we use, and as Aakrit was saying, guide them towards creating companies which is good for India and create sovereign from there. I think that's the way India model has worked to my mind so far and will also work going forward.
I think a regulator will set priorities and guardrails. And right now, they're figuring out what the priorities should be and what the guardrails are. And then you sort of tweak from there versus, you know, adopting one model versus the other.
Okay. I'm told that that's all the time we have. But that one question was fantastic. Thank you so much, ma'am. Big round of applause for this entire panel, captivating audience. And thanks so much for taking the time, guys.